Welcome back to Atlassian Team 26. We're streaming live here in Anaheim. I'm Alison Kosik alongside Christophe, Bertrand, and we are about to have our last interview of this fantastic conference. And we're going to be talking about how, as everybody is adding AI to products, far fewer are redesigning how humans actually work alongside them.
Right, this human interface is going to be very, very critical, and we have the perfect guest for this segment.
We certainly do. I want to bring in Charlie Sutton. He's the Chief Design Officer at Atlassian. Welcome to theCUBE.
Thanks for having me.
So talk me through your role at Atlassian in this role.
Well, effectively, everything that you see, whether it's an app, a part of the platform, maybe some documentation on our website, that all has to be designed by somebody. And given the size of the system of work right now, it's a lot of material and a lot of interfaces. So my team of designers and I work together to try and make that feel like it was made by one person. So my job is to help make it feel cohesive so that the experience kind of flows for teams.
Yeah, and this is the idea of having humans work alongside it.
Yeah, I think the humans and agents probably need very similar things. Like we all know a human does not so great work when they don't know the reason why they're doing it, if there's no goal. And what we're seeing on the technical side is agents have many of the same needs. They need to understand a goal. So it's quite interesting that my job 2 years ago, which was designing for humans and how they get a sense of flow, it's actually quite similar when it comes to agents. A lot of the needs are shared, so that's super cool.
Yeah, there's this concept of a human tax, right? When it comes to software, what is it? And what is it about to become with agents?
I think in some ways we're probably going to enter an era of more specialization. If you think about my job as a designer, maybe only 40% of my day is designing and the rest is doing the knowledge work tasks that all of us have to do. I think what agents free up is our ability to focus more on our areas of specialization, because I know if I had an extra 4 hours in the day, I would work on very different things. Or if I, at 8 o'clock at night, had an idea,
right.
None of my teammates are available, quite rightly, but I could work with an agent to go deep on that. So I always think about it as agents open up the possibility for high specialization for humans. And I think that's super exciting.
Right.
Do you think that human tax is really about cognitive overload, the constant switching, searching, remembering, and updating? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think we all struggle with pretty universal things. I think fractured attention, particularly when we do a lot of our work through a whole bunch of remote experiences. So like our attention is broken up all of the time. I think that's a cognitive load we have to deal with. I think another thing is just we all think and work differently. Like all three of us, I'm a very visual thinker. You might be a verbal thinker. You might be an analytical thinker. So we're all having these like communication overheads of translating. Then you multiply that out to a team, very different ways of thinking. Multiply that out to an organization, then you have this mass transmission, translation, friction and load, like you said. And I think the opportunity for us is to try and make that flow better. And I think agents do offer a lot of capability to help that to happen. I think
in many ways, agents reduce this cycle from ideation to execution, which is what you were describing. Now I'm curious about when you think about design, especially at Atlassian, you have this sort of double level of complexity where you have to design or change the way you design to introduce the use of agents, not only for your platform, for yourselves, but also for the clients, the customers who now have to move towards this AI native concept, or execution for some of them. So you have to design and redesign how you've designed. Right? Something like that.
Yeah, you have to design the design and design the designing.
Right.
But that's actually the perfect scenario because then you share the same problem. So I'll give you a great example is I think since the beginning of the year, we've made over 12,000 prototypes inside design. That's a lot of potential tokens that are used. So we have a motivation to make that more efficient. So we've gone into our design system and we've optimized it for consumption by agents, which lowers the token cost and also makes it more efficient. That is exactly the concern that our customers have. They want to lower the token cost and they want the quality of the output to be better. So I tend to find that a shared problem is a problem halved. And so I think in some ways the situation you're talking about is a great benefit to everybody.
what about this shift from designing for prompting to designing for delegation? Is that an evolution that's happening?
Yeah, I think the early stages of dealing with agents was interesting. That it was a lot of giving prompts via text. And if you think about our day-to-day interactions, that's hard to do. And the written word is actually not great. So, a good example is if I gave you some feedback, you'd send me a design, and I said in writing, I'm really not feeling that.
Yes.
And you're like, okay. Whereas if you sent me a Loom video, you said, hey, look, I'm really not feeling that. Exactly the same content, but the context is radically different. And so I think the exciting thing is the more that people can engage with AI, with the modes, audio, video, text, and the interaction that they feel comfortable with. Like some people are happy in CLIs, some people want to be dragging and dropping, other people just want to speak. Then you're actually going to get rid of a lot of that context loss. And I think we're starting to see that. A great example is Confluence Remix. A lot of the designers in the Confluence team were like, I don't want to read long pages all the time. This would be so much better as an infographic. So the team worked together to produce a feature that is just turn this text into a graphic. So that's an example of dynamic content. And I think that is going to make it a lot easier to sort of engage and become AI native, because there's so many more compatible ways for them to do it.
Right. Yeah.
That there may be some people who are saying, look, haven't we just created a faster way to make more mess? Yeah. Right? What do you say to that? And how do you prevent that from happening from your perspective of the work you do to help literally better control, better manage, and better evolve?
Yeah, I think the dynamics of mess creation have always been pretty similar. So rushing very quickly into making something without thinking.
Right.
Maybe not communicating with colleagues who have different ideas. I think a lot of those problems will be the same if we don't take a few steps. So a really good example is share a common goal. Make sure everyone in the team and the agents are aware of the goal. Another really good example would be put more effort into planning and strategy and ideation up front before you go and create a whole bunch of code. But in a weird way, that has always been true. I think just maybe we didn't understand that it was possible to take that approach because we had this big mountain of code. It was like, how do I start digging into the mountain? I think increasingly we're seeing, no, you can and should spend time getting the right ideas because it's maybe cheaper to prototype, or you're more confident you can generate variants in code. So I always tend to find that history rhymes. What you're referring to, mess at scale, has always been a problem. Right. And I think this maybe is an opportunity to kind of reckon with it.
Do you feel like AI is freeing designers to be more creative, or does it risk flattening creativity?
Oh, look, the analogy we use internally is that whenever the floor moves up, the ceiling moves up. So like the floor has moved up. Everyone here could say, I'm going to give you a prototype for a reasonably good mobile app for delivering groceries. And a year ago, that was not possible. You could have given me a sketch or a description. The floor has moved up. And that average is okay. But simultaneously, the ceiling moved up. What we all now expect, because that's so easy, is a much better experience. And so for designers, we're trying to keep our eyes on the ceiling and not the floor. Right. And there's a whole lot more movement in the ceiling than perhaps we realize right now. A little bit like in the early days of mobile apps, like it was just amazing to be able to order a car. Now we have this expectation of an experience that is completely different. That will happen with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and that expectation ball keeps getting, the expectations just get higher and higher.
Exactly, and that's why I think the specialization that is freed up by agents is how you deal with getting to that ceiling.
Yeah.
I kind of call it at times the iPhoneization of AI, at least of coding.
Right.
I mean, literally, you don't need to know anything about coding to be pretty dangerous, which is the problem. You can be very dangerous. So that brings up the question of trust.
Yeah.
So how can I trust that in my organization, agents are being built in a way, are designed in a way that will be respectful of data, will be respectful processes, will not break things?
Yeah.
How can I be? Can I trust that the decisions made autonomously by agents will actually allow me to work in full trust for my processes if they are going to be an extension of my team.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the topic?
Well, first of all, there's a technical dimension. As a designer, whenever I'm making something, a PM will remind me, oh, Charlie, that doesn't work because the permissions don't support that. And I used to be very frustrated, but actually permissioning that is built into the graph is actually one of the key ways to create trust. I can't see what I'm not meant to see. I can't share what I'm not allowed to share. So there's a very big technical investment in the teamwork graph. I think there's also the human dimension, which is, you might notice when we show a lot of the Rovo experiences, we do share the reasoning, because I think a lot of trust comes from understanding the state of the machine. Imagine if we just hit all of that and it went, ta-da. I don't think you trust something that you don't understand some of its operation. So I think that helps you build a mental model. And then I think a lot of the things that we've been talking about are for maybe everyday knowledge workers and engineering teams, but the same applies to admins. Like, they themselves want to move to their level of specialization, and they want to build these amazing trusted experiences. Like in our admin design team, they're doing all these amazing ways of looking at new footprints for an organization's data structure using AI.
Okay.
So I think that's another example of where the specialization of the trust people also gets released. So they're not just hitting approve, deny, approve, writing a script. They can develop much more sophisticated trust architectures because they can also leverage AI.
If leaders are watching this conversation, what's one takeaway that they can take with them about AI and design? What do you think?
I think the one takeaway I would offer is that humans and agents largely need the same thing and will be crippled or helped by the same things. If you are poor at articulating your goals as a leader, well, you've also disadvantaged a whole fleet of agents. But by the same token, if your company is very open, if you're willing to share, then that context becomes magnified in its power for your agents. So whatever you are planning to do to make your humans happier will also make your agents happier.
And what is your favorite use of Rovo? We've been asked to ask you this question.
Like I said before, I'm a visual person, and I just think one of the most important things in design is to get what's in your head out onto paper. So for me, Confluence whiteboards and just the ability to generate a visual map of something that might be a very complex idea, I find that's very helpful in my process, because in the end, words sometimes aren't enough. And so I'm a great believer that humans like to visualize complex ideas. So for me, Confluence whiteboards made by Rovo are very cool.
So as we move toward a more AI-empowered future, which is clear as the ceiling goes higher and higher, what do you think will make more human-centered companies kind of stand out alongside AI?
I think it's understanding that sometimes people don't tell you explicitly what they need, and you really have to observe their behavior. So a great example, the morning brief. I'm not sure anyone would have ever said, the only way I can start my day is to get a morning brief. But if you observe humans, we're highly ritualistic creatures. We like rhythms to our day. We don't like living in a 24-hour notification casino. And so if you observe people, then you tend to build the right things. I think the companies who will succeed are going to be very good at their observation of the implicit behavior of people. That's actually a nice analogy to the graph. It's often the implicit stuff that's very interesting. And so for me, morning brief is a great example of that's what humans need to start their day. They're not machines. And so there's so many opportunities there in making experiences that really speak to the rhythms and rituals of how people work. So that's a great opportunity.
And maybe in closing, I'm curious about how does it change your own team? How has it changed who you hire, the profile you're looking for? Are you looking for people who are maybe less technical, who are more, you mentioned this idea of representation, have this ability to really visualize, or at least direct to visualization? Is it changing the job of a designer in essentially a very modern enterprise?
I think in some ways it's returning back to what it always has been. Design is a very technical craft. You go and talk to an architect, they know about thermal loads in buildings, they understand engineering. Designers are technical creatures, and what this is enabling us to do is to say, if you know how to fix that problem, you can go into the code base, you can generate code without being a 10-year SWE, and you can get a pull request, and that thing has a high chance of making it out. So I think in some ways we're almost repermissioning design to be the nerds that we really are underneath our aesthetic tendencies. And so I think design is also always about being close to the metal. Be close to where the material actually is. The material of what I do is code, and we're getting this opportunity now to be close to it again. Just like ye old web designers in the early 2000s, we all wrote HTML. We understood the material of the web. Now we understand the material of agents, and designers are in that material. So I actually think it's just returning or re-emphasizing how important that is.
So what's required to be a successful surfer? I was put up to this question.
Wow. I'm trying to think about how I answered that question.
Well, I know when I surf,
Yes.
staying up is really, really hard. What's the trick?
I think that the big trick to standing on a surfboard is to be loose and relaxed. I think natural tendency is to be rigid. And remember, like in all board sports, snowboarding, skateboarding, you want to have your center of gravity as low as possible. So be low and be loose.
Yeah, but then when I fall, the board's going to hit me in the head because it's stuck to my
It's an
ankle,
amazing
obviously.
teacher, isn't it?
Yes, it is. How to not fall.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for stopping by
It's been a
theCUBE.
pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And you've been watching theCUBE, the leader in live technology coverage and enterprise tech analysis. Thanks for watching.